Hello and welcome back to Tin Star. After we concluded the interlude at the end of last episode, we had Julie Moore, the Undertaker, come over to our little abode. And, well, let's continue from there. Your chubby mouse flicks whiskers, then scurries away from the door. The Undertaker waits just outside with hands clasped idly before her, with only a thin stream of steam issuing from her tight-set mouth. Julie's black dress is a practical sort without hint of frill or lace, just heavy layers to beat back the cold. Her dark eyes regard you steadily as if she had all the time in the world. "Marshal Smith?" she inquires politely. "I have a client you will want to see." Raise an eyebrow. "Hmm?" "Yes, that sort of client," she remarks and holds up a hand. There in her palm rests a Marshal's star. It is a near twin to your own. Same thin tin with the same almost sharp edges. But where yours had borne a bloodstain that has stubbornly refused to retreat, this one has seen worse days. The edges are blackened by soot, and there is a layer of grime that utterly hides the shine. Step outside, yes. This way, Marshal, Julie says as she leads the way toward her place of profession. The grieving parlor is as you remember. Though it is now lit by a host of candles that flicker and sway in the breeze that edges through the open door. At the center, though, rests a full and lidded coffin. Black crepe and dignified lace adorn badly battered wood of rough years, while bits of dirt cling to the sides. Numerous scratches mar the front and make for deep furrows in many places. That coffin seems familiar. Does it now? She remarks, then steps to the lid and eases it off. Marshal James lies before you, unmoving. He could almost be sleeping. This is going to be trouble, isn't it? The eyes of the corpse flutter open. Marshal James steps right out of the coffin. "That is a heck of a thing to say," he notes as he stares over at you. The man seems very much alive. Just stare at him. "Did you think I was dead?" he asks and gives a little chuckle afterward. "Well, here we are, Marshal Smith, far from California." Julie steps to his side and gently cleans the smudged tin star with strokes of a cloth. "Does anyone know about me?" he asks and lets her pin the now shining star back into its proper place upon his tunic. I don't know about you. I might have accidentally on purpose told the entire town about you. Marshal James blinks hard at the revelation. It came up during a trial. That happened. Nothing official came of it, so I hope we're in the clear now. He notes and then clears his throat. I imagine you've got questions, so best make it quick. I need to be out of town before sunup. So, coffin? It was the best way Julie could think to smuggle me into town without being seen, Marshal James says and glances at the lady Undertaker fondly. And it was a good idea. Of course it was, Julie notes lightly. No one questions my trade, why would they? You and Julie? Husband and wife, Marshal James offers over. Been that way for some years after an unfortunate incident. He played that so convincingly that of all in attendance only I was not fooled, Julie says. Even so, I covered for him, and that was the beginning of things for us. You aren't dead, but everyone says you were. Yeah, I imagine they would, he admits. The name James isn't exactly a rare one. Lots of families had it, and I have had a lot of siblings. Julie sets a caring hand upon his arm and steadies him ever so slightly. Go slow, there's time. Yeah, there is for this. The other marshal agrees, then looks back to you. I had a brother, one among many, but the only one who followed me into the law. With my help, Eugene became a marshal like me, but he was several years junior, so instead of getting a plum post out in California, he got one out in Nevada. Your brother was the marshal here, wasn't he? Yes, doing well, or so I heard, up until Eugene died, Marshal James says with a sharp hint of loss. I rode out afterward, asked about it as discreetly as I could. See, I had stumbled upon something back in Sacramento, the hint of a conspiracy, and, well, it seems I was right. Yeah, I learned why Dumbleweed Jack shot your brother. He was paid, likely, by the Uptons. Yeah, I figured as much, Marshal James says and glances off to the side a long moment. It all fits together when you look at it just right, and I'll be looking forward to seeing Jack live out his years in a cramped cell for what he did, but there are more worthy lives in the balance here and now. What about your brother's coffin? I was the one who dug it up and took the body back to California, he admits. It were all legal, like, if you're interested. Well, good. That settles that. It does, he agrees. I'm getting the feeling I'm not getting the full story here. Lay it all out for me. If you like, Marshal James replies. I've been a marshal out in Sacramento for some while, since before the Brothers' War. Wasn't much to it. Your regular miscreants don't have the brains of a sack of beans. But then I brushed up against these people from back east, too. Well, they were dipped deep in something, I could tell. But they kept their nose clean and I couldn't pounce. But I could watch. Watched for years as they came and went, talking and buying all sorts of things and people. Never selling, though. That's how I knew they were after something big. Well, a couple of years back, I got wind of a party they were throwing. Invitation only, that sort of thing. Naturally, I invited myself and slipped into the shindig unobserved. I heard plenty before they spotted me. There was a fight, I nearly got killed and would have been dispatched but for Julie here, he says and notes her fondly. She spirited me away in her carriage, ostensibly to dispose of my corpse. What she actually did was nurse me back to a fighting trim. Julie blushes ever so slightly. It didn't take much. Simon here is as healthy as a horse. He's right about that. Now, at least. Marshal James continues. I would have laid low, gathered up my case and then sprung it on them, but word trickled back from Nevada about my brother and his doings. The conspirators must have gotten nervous because they opened up my grave in California. When they didn't see my body, they figured that Julie had betrayed them and we had to scatter before they got a grip on us. I don't quite know what or why things happened next, but they arranged to shoot my brother Eugene out here in Lander County. Maybe they always intended to do that. Maybe they were just killing two birds with one stone. Their real target was the railroad that's coming through here soon. Weren't much I could do on my own. Oh, I was the law and I could call on plenty of vigilantes for muscle, but the conspiracy had already spread. If I went all in, I'd just be making myself a target on account of the big three weren't to be found. At least not until you came along. You do remember Thomas Upton, the man you murdered? He asks. Nod. Now, I could have let you swing. I feel bad about not doing that, but the truth is I needed someone out here, someone who I knew wasn't part of the conspiracy, someone I might be able to trust. Me, you're talking about me. Yes, and for one specific reason, Marshal James says. Thomas Upton was one of the three prime conspirators. Now, I don't know why fate put you where it did, but here we are, coming toward the end of things. You, me, Julie, and what's left of the Upton family. Apparently, neither the captured Regina nor the still free Reginald were ever at your trial. At least they didn't recognize you during that little brush with them. That could be useful. Funny you should mention the Uptons. I think I've got Regina Upton in a cell back at the office. Do you? Marshal James asks and raises an eyebrow. Julie mentioned you had a prisoner, but this is a grand stroke of luck. Bring her over and we'll have ourselves a long talk. The walk back to the office finds your head spinning in with revelations. So many things lined up that it beggars belief. The moonlit night is a bright one with starry, cloudless skies. The street is as quiet as it gets, with only a soft clink and murmur drifting out from the saloons. Not even a lone drunkard is to be seen wandering about in the cold. A tiny silhouette catches your eye. There on a nearby stoop sits Whiskered Mousy. His tail is wrapped round his chubby body as he stares over at you. His little shiny eyes are like beads of onyx as you watch him. Strange, but you can't remember him greeting you outside at night, let alone in winter. Your office lies just down the way. All is quiet. We're 100% stepping over to Mousy. Mousy is utterly still as you approach. Then his whiskers begin to twitch energetically. The little guy begins to groom himself, tiny paws trying to smooth down a hackle of raised fur. Hold up my hand. Scared, the little fella is scared. That sentiment is doubled as he abruptly raises up your hand, your arm, and deposits himself in your pocket. There he pokes his head out, whiskers shifting in the night breeze. Something isn't right. Something forced Mousy out of the office. Your mouse gives a little squeak as voices drift down the way. A couple of men out round the back of things, digging in the dead of night during winter. Investigate. A glance around back finds three men quietly digging a hole right at the back of your office. The first, a real bruiser, is knee-deep in mud. The second is a rangy one who totes a muddy bucket to and fro. The third, a rifleman, has his back to you as he watches the wrong end of the alley. You know what? I've played the whole game without doing anything like that. I'm tempted. I'm very tempted to pull out my pistol and blaze away. Do I wait? You're not sure, we'll wait. The digging and filling goes on for a while longer until the second man pronounces the hole deep enough. Then the big fella eases out, takes up a generous barrel of gunpowder and rolls it toward the hole. Pull my pistol and open fire. Yep. Your pistol barks in your hand. The big fella drops and the others scatter into the night as your rounds dance wildly. When at last your smoke wagon stops smoking, quiet returns. I swear this will go badly for you in the end, Regina says as you escort her down the street, but those cold promises ring increasingly hollow as the two of you near the undertaker's. What is this? We've got some... That deserves a whack on the head. Say nothing, just head in. James's coffin now rests in the corner, but otherwise the room is as somber as before. Marshal James has a pistol out and waits in the far corner beside Julie. We heard a ruckus. One louder than the usual, Julie adds. Yeah, ruckus all right. By the way, Julie, you'll have some trade coming in the morning. Oh, Julie remarks with a wary edge. Thank you. Her trade aside, who is that with you? Regina. Regina raises her chin up to an imperious height. Indeed, and I demand to be set free. Do you remember me? Marshal James begins almost conversationally. Am I supposed to? Regina wonders with an indifferent shrug. I imagine not. You have been ever so busy that many little things have slid from your mind, the other marshal says. But me? I've had nothing to do but recall your features every day for the last 3 years. Regina tilts her head as if to begin a reply, but Marshal James cuts her off. See, when this is all over, I'm going to have you tried in the Nevada courts with Marshal Smith here as witness. If you aren't found guilty, I'll drag you back to California and we'll try it again. Failing that, there are the federal courts. One of them will make you stand trial for your myriad crimes, and I hope to God to see you hanged. Marshal James says, then spares you a small nod as he adds, properly hanged. You can try, Regina says defiantly. Oh, I've been building this case a long while. Your pal Tumbleweed Jack is already in Carson City, and I expect he'll flip on you real soon to get out of the hole he's in. Mr. Steele, the man you sent here to impersonate a marshal, has already been found guilty by the residents of this little town. Now, I know about the Indian leader called Hungry Snake. Bannock tribe, right? Well, the only way you'll see him again is after you get stretched. And if you were to see the stack of papers I've got back in California, let's just say you could cook dinner on them. Regina shakes her head. You have nothing that we Uptons can't work around? I think we're done here, Marshal James notes. At least for this part. Please have your deputy take this blustering Easton aback. Marshal James spreads out a series of maps onto the table for you to peruse. I think I know what they're going to do. They're going to hit the Central Pacific when the snow melts, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on other targets. Yes, it seems like the Central Pacific would almost have to be their target. Yeah, nothing else makes sense, Marshal James says. Julie arrives with a little coffee and pours you each a dark cup. Marshal James sips absently as he peers over at you and asks, I hate to wander off the beaten track, but I've kept track of you and your doings out this way. Julie was obviously part of that, but only a recent one. I've also been getting letters from Jeff Donner, an old friend of my brother's. He told me a little about you. Now, what you do in this county is your business, and I'll leave it at that. Somewhere in the town a bit of a ruckus starts and draws your ear. Sounds like a fight over at the Motherlode Saloon. One that is soon quieted down with a suddenness that tells you just how the sight of Dan's shadow can make people remember just how small they really are. That said, I'm not interested in whatever side deals you might have made with the local law. Now, the destruction of that dam was controversial, at least until I heard reports of the flooding around these parts. Do you understand? We Tin Stars have to stay together out here. Read from the same page or else our book will close. So, not for him to continue, yes. The plan is simple. You're the only one with authority in these parts, and it is you who needs to talk to the Central Pacific Railroad. But you must have friends. I can contact on your behalf to help us out when the time comes. Yeah. We can probably do all of them. I've got some pull with Richard Hartigan. Marshal James stares over at you for a long moment, then clears his throat at last. Do you? Yes, I do. I know a peculiar Shoshone Indian who might be able to pull together some braves. It'd be a short ride down to Elko to find him, Marshal James notes after you fill him in. And Indians always know other Indians. Yep. Tubman Shea of the Six Horns Lodge owes me a favor. He'll ride out with his warriors if I ask. Nice to have a favor like that, Marshal James notes. Who else? I know a Paiute chief called Many Falling Rocks. He'll ride out if I ask. Well, of course he will, Marshal James says. I just hope he likes me as much as he did you. The Paiute can be a mite touchy about things. I recently brushed against a regiment of U.S. cavalry near the border with Oregon. They might help. The way you talk, a maybe will be a yes from them, Marshal James points out. Sheriff Preston has 4 deputies right here in town. Oh, of course, the sheriff's your friend. Marshal James snorts in amusement. So I'll approach him and even draw up the paperwork to make it legal for him to work in the county. There are the Saints of Albion Falls, particularly Bishop Hancock. Saints of Utah and such. All right. Well, I'll ask the bishop to lend a hand in your behalf. Marshal James' office. Mind you, I don't go to church for anything but weddings and funerals these days. Same. I know a few people who might ride out with me. I'll be lucky to knock on every door you've said so far. How did you find time to be marshal? Marshal James asks and then shakes his head. Never mind, you've just got a different style, I'd guess. Let's talk about where I need to be. I'm going to have my hands full with gathering up the help. Looks like I'll be springing for messengers as well as telegraph time, Marshal James notes. But as for you, I think you should head out to the Central Pacific Railhead and see what you can do there. Yeah, okay, I'll head to the Central Pacific Railhead then and see to defending the railhead. Gather your closest friends then. This is hit big or go home, Marshal James notes, and I hope to see you soon. Julie touches your arm as you turn to go, and there is a hesitation that belies her usual serenity. I'll be waiting here for you and Simon, whether you need me or not. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to be with my husband for a little while before dawn comes and separates us again. You leave the two alone and head back out into the night as you consider who you might approach in the morning. Dan Schmidt won't be hard to drag along, given that he is your deputy. The rest will keep until morning, and it does. Find Miss Carroway. You head over to the motherlode and slide in through the swinging doors as morning light begins to spill in. There at the bar sits Miss Carroway. She's halfway through cleaning her shotgun, the impressive piece of fitted iron and steel and notched in a dozen places in memory of its work. With meticulous care she oils each screw before slowly assembling it back together. Winter can play havoc with the littlest parts. Now that spring is coming, I can finally do this without worrying that it'll be for nothing, she says and just barely turns toward you. Is it time? Yep, it's time. Miss Carroway sends a grin your way and steadily finishes with her assembly. I'll be along soon enough. Wouldn't miss this for the world. You head on out, confident that she'll soon be riding beside you. Sure, head on out. Deputy Schmidt steps on out of the Grand Haven Hotel. He waves farewell to those inside and then thumps his way over to you. Carroway edges out of the Motherlode saloon and shades her hat against the sun as she gathers her horse. With a final pause to survey the empty little town of Preston Springs, you mount up and ride out. Winter is reluctant to release its grip, but here and there bits of green poke up through the dull brown of last year's grove. Spring is coming, soon enough anyway. When it does, the Humboldt Valley is going to be vibrant once more. 2 days of riding puts you in sight of the Central Pacific Railroad. There in the distance it is a bright sea of light that flares to life at sunset and lingers on a while after. Smoke, lots of smoke, greasy grey and thick black both. A spark of civilization arcing right through the shadow-swathed frontier. But it will stay lit only if the immense project continues. That is what the Uptons are trying to snuff so that they can fill their families' empty pockets. Come the dawn, you ride toward the railhead. The din grows steadily with the rising sun as hundreds of men labor ahead of the track. The first roil out like a tide receding from shore and leave a clear flat path through what had once been rough and wild. Behind them comes a continuous stream of wagons that kick up heavy dust as they drop off heavy bundles of wood ties at regular intervals. A legion of tie layers descend upon each package and lay out the wood boards like they were playing cards. I hate to see the valley like this, Dan says softly as he regards the work. I have deep scars that don't ache half as much as taking a glance of them laying the iron. I bet there's dozens of whiskey tents and gambling tables over there. There'd have to be. Work makes people thirsty, and all that pay has to go somewhere, Miss Carroway says, but hardly seems to know she's speaking. The rail layers come next. A dozen men to each band, they carry a long rail forward at a walk as if out for a stroll. Every step is in unison. As they approach an empty stretch of ties, then comes the command, down, and the rail is dropped into place neat and easy. The spikers follow behind them, tap in their trade, and then let the next fellow take a single whack before they move on, never pausing. While you watch, the road of iron is being laid as fast as one might saunter along. Ahead, a small knot of men in bowler hats gather, discuss something amongst themselves. Then the man at the fore turns toward you. "What the blazes do you want?" The foreman barks out in a voice like a stretch of wet leather. His sunken eyes and sun-dark skin all but glow in the morning heat. "Let my tin star shine." "Oh, I get you," the man says. "I'm Raymond Hayworth, and I'm the one laying iron through this stretch. Now then, who exactly are you?"
That, Mr. Hayworth, is Marshal Calamity Smith," a man calls out above a sudden bray of beasts. He ambles closer to the gathering, and his dark black beard is a tidy thing that helps frame a bright red work shirt.
"Danny, you know this Marshal?" Hayworth asks skeptically.
"I'd never forget meeting at Instar," Denny says. "We shook hands and parted friends. Now it's been a little while, but I sure didn't forget that day."
"Must have been quite a grip," Hayworth notes and turns to you. "Since Denny's word is good with me, you're a Marshal, all right. Why are you here?" "You heard the rumors lately? Something big is coming." "I don't bother with rumors," Hayworth scoffs. "What I want are facts." Forces from back east are at work here to halt your expansion. "I know. Everyone in the Central Pacific knows," Hayworth says. "Back east, there's Doc Durant trying to have the Union Pacific grab every mile of track he can get. There's battles being waged in foundries, assembly yards, and even in the halls of Congress for every scrap of iron steam engine and vote.
There will be Indian raiders."
"Yeah, I figured it'd be our turn," Hayworth notes. "The line through Nebraska got plagued with all manner of Indian mischief, shooting at work crews, derailing trains, stealing horses in the night. The Shoshone around here have been better than all that, but that tribe doesn't live all along the line."
"If you're worried about my bona fides, I understand. There was a marshal named Steele."
"I know the tale," Hayworth says. "I read about a Marshal Smith who held an impromptu trial, presented evidence, and found Steele guilty. Your name was also mentioned concerning the destruction of a dam hereabouts."
"Yes."
"I invited over a U.S. cavalry regiment to support you."
"Did you?"
Hayworth says amiably. "That's mighty considerate."
"I convinced the Paiute tribe to come down from Oregon to act in our mutual interest."
"Impressive. Out in Nebraska, they've got Pawnee scouts that work side by side with the Union Pacific," Hayworth recollects. "I wouldn't mind such an arrangement here."
"There's a local Shoshone tribe called the Six Horns. They'll be here soon to help."
"I like that. Indians see a lot more than us out here," Hayworth notes.
"A local levy of town deputies will be out here soon."
"More rifles are always better," Hayworth agrees.
"Volunteers from local communities of saints will ride in eventually."
"Saints? You mean Mormons?" Hayworth asks. "That's fine. We're going to have to rely on them for part of the line eventually. Might as well start now."
"The notorious outlaw Richard Hartigan and his men will be fighting on your side soon."
"Thank you," Hayworth manages to say. "I guess it's better that he's inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in."
"More Shoshone will trickle in over the days to come."
"More Indians on our side means fewer who aren't," Hayworth agrees.
"Yeah, let's not dance about things. You must know my reputation. I'm here to help defend you."
Hayworth glances at the others and notes how Denny stays by your side, then gazes off into the distance. "The thing is, you might well keep your word. When people talk of you, they talk of your fondness for the law. Now the county out here runs as smooth as an oiled engine."
He turns to confer with his fellows for a moment. When he turns back, his lips part with an honest smile.
"Of course we'd be honored to have your help. If you've got suggestions, we'll do what we can. Welcome to the Central Pacific Railroad."
Have there been any attacks?"
"None," Hayworth notes. "Sounds like these fellas are laying back, waiting for the right moment."
"Where's the railroad headed?"
"We're laying for the mouth of Hunter's Pass," Hayworth explains. "Probably get there tomorrow. It has a low grade and near to no obstructions to blow."
"Do we have enough black powder here for a long fight?"
"We used to use tons of the stuff back in the Sierra Nevada," Hayworth notes. "If what we have isn't enough, I can always telegraph back for more. How many rifles have you got here? 300 and more, not counting shotguns for the drovers and scouts, Hayworth replies. That sounds like plenty. Does the telegraph work from here? Of course it does, Hayworth says. We've got our own operator in line straight back to the main branch. Heck, this will be the main branch once things get done. Let's talk preparations. Sure, I'd like to establish a watch in the camp perimeter. We've got one of those already, Hayworth replies. This is Indian country after all, but I'll double it for a while and have the men walk it instead of sit. I want to make a few bombs for any sudden visitors. I've got powder, and I've also got a fella who makes that nitroglycerin stuff that blasts like there's no tomorrow and no yesterday, Hayworth says proudly, then hesitates. But I don't want it used in a camp, understand? Yeah, sure. Can you call for reinforcements down the line? I can, Hayworth allows, but they'll be a while in arriving. Let's dig a trench around the camp and skirmish pits ahead of them. A trench? Hayworth muses for a moment. Yes, we could, and I can probably spare the men for it. Prepare and wait for the attack to come. Well, time to get to it, Hayworth says, then gives you a nod and sets off deeper into the camp. Within the hour, a standing watch is formed on the perimeter with slow roving patrols along the edges of things. A simple trench is thrown up in places, the bottom of it just deep enough to give a man just enough space to fire and reload his weapon under cover. Hayworth directs you to a little shack set well away from everything else. Indeed, not a soul makes camp near these wooden walls. A simple sign written in a splash of red paint has been nailed beside the door. It reads, "Do not knock, ring bell softly." A single silver bell hangs just beneath it. Knock anyway. Yeah, we'll ring the bell. A moment passes, then the door creaks open and a bare-faced gentleman in a tidy if singed grey suit steps out. Requesting or picking up? Mr. Hayworth sent me. Ah, then you are therefore neither early nor late, he replies. I am Arthur Murrell, the chemist in these parts. How long have you been a chemist? A decade and more, Arthur notes. Mind you, at first I worked in a pharmacy, but that didn't pay nearly as well as this. What are you working on now? I just finished a batch of nitroglycerin, Arthur says, for the cut-through Hunter's Pass. They probably could blow it with powder, but nitro is cheaper and easier, if more dangerous. What are the dangers of using nitroglycerin? That it'll explode when you would wish otherwise. Arthur sums up and offers over a small smile. It is a volatile mix of sulfuric and nitric acid that has a cascade reaction when a certain amount of physical stress is applied to it. Tell me more. Drop it, it explodes. Smack it, it explodes. Cool it down and it doesn't want to explode so badly, but just heating it back up might make it explode. Sometimes you can just look at it sideways and it'll explode. We mix it up every day because it's too dangerous to transport. I mean, they tried that a couple of times. First, it sank a ship on the Panama Isthmus when someone dropped a crate. Then another crate did the same to a Wells Fargo company office in San Fran. Nothing but kindling left. I heard tell that they're trying to make it more stable, maybe by cutting it with diatomaceous earth. But until they do, I'll be making it by hand, slow and steady. Any side effects from making a batch of nitroglycerin? Yeah, it hasn't been a walk in the park, Arthur admits and rubs at his forehead. In the beginning I'd get those headaches and my heart would pound something fierce, but those faded pretty quick. Though if I go without making a batch for a couple of days, I'll get a headache again, but that always goes away once I get back to work. Alright, how far did that increase our explosive? 36%. We still probably don't want to handle any of them. I need enough gunpowder to make trouble. I can get you that, not a problem for someone Mr. Hayworth trusts, Arthur says, then proceeds to mix you up a fresh batch of dry powder. I'd say be careful, but I get the feeling you know that already. Preparations continue as rail track is laid down the line. Night comes on quick and puts every man except those standing watch or on patrol in their blankets until morning. Then the whole place stirs like a mighty sleeping giant, shakes off the cobwebs of sleep and downs their show. Amid the hustle and the bustle, a colourful flap of cloth draws your eye to a familiar wagon as it eases into the camp. Barrels, boxes, and sacks adorn it, and are swiftly unloaded by the Chinese railman. Despite the harsh winter, his motions are strangely spry, and the tune he hums bears a lively spring to it. It seems that Wong Dai Choi has returned to more ordinary routes after his journey farther east. The coloured cloth ruffles along one side as the familiar old merchant steps out and catches your eye. Calamity Smith, what a pleasant surprise.
I should have expected to find you here.
Indeed, it is where I am.
Wong Dai Choi notes and offers a small smile.
Come in and sit. My wagon has little that is not already taken, but perhaps it has enough.
The wagon is packed, and yet every little box or sack bears the little tag with Chinese characters marked upon it. As you watch, he tenders a century egg to an eager young fellow, then sends the man on his way with a kind word. Is there tea to be had?
Sadly, no. The real men buy all I have and ask for more,
Wong Dai Choi notes.
especially as the waters along this stretch of track have proven to be saturated with salts. I have taken samples of those same waters and intend to study its properties. Perhaps they will have a medicinal benefit.
Have you been medicinal benefit?
Indeed, we are creatures of salt and water after all. For we cannot live long without either, but some bodies are out of balance in this regard and might well benefit from a bath to restore the proper flows.
Have you been back to California?
There and back again so many times,
Wong Dai Choi admits,
that eventually I struck a deal with several persons to send me what I order by the iron rail, so that I do not wear my poor wagon out.
Have century eggs sold well?
Very well. They sell steadily, though jellied chicken feet have proved far more popular.
Do you truly have nothing you can sell?
Nothing to sell, but perhaps something to give, he says, then leans forward slightly. Something for the marshal who has so stridently tried to civilize what can be a barbarous land.
Is this like a Chinese tale where you tell me a secret that will change my life?
Yes, the secret is work very, very hard,
Wong Dai Choi says with a knowing smile.
No, what I am talking about is a technique for concentration. A simple matter of putting one's mind in the proper harmony. A kind of calm that allows one to act despite distractions.
Alright. Which stats do we want? Gunfighting, surely. I often don't get the architecture. Yeah, well, I'll take that.
It is never the bullet, you hear, that matters. It is the intention of those who launch them toward you. For once the trigger is pulled, the matter is out of everyone's hands,
Wong Dai Choi says, and just like that, everything becomes clear. A soft bell chimes. With it comes a shudder that runs up your spine and leaves a strange calm in its wake. Gunfighting increased. How much? 5%. Okay.
There we are,
Wong Dai Choi says.
My gift is given to you. May it help you through your struggles ahead.
With that, he conducts you back out to the bustle of the camp, and there you say your goodbyes. Days pass, and the railhead shifts eastward along the already laid iron to the mouth of Hunter's Pass. That's going to be where the final showdown is, isn't it? Fresh rifle pits are dug along the parameter. Watches are set farther up the ridges while the roving patrols move between them. Between the twin hills, the men set to work with their usual vigor to have the twin rails of iron methodically advance. Then the next day, a cry of "Indians!" goes up from one of the watches. Hayworth gives the signal and men snatch up their rifles. At the edge of the camp you find a large warband atop horses and an impressive regalia that adorns all except the figure at the fore, an Indian in a white shirt with a bowler hat set atop his head. Around his throat is looped a necklace of bones, and a vicious spear rests easy in his hand as if two separate worlds had not collided within him. Yiska, and with friends. It's all right, Hayworth, these are friendly Indians.
If you say so,
Hayworth says and motions for his men to stand down from their firing post. At the fore of things, Yiska spurs his horse on ahead and rides up. Nod gratefully. Yiska nods back, then exchanges a quick and erudite greeting with a much surprised Hayworth. Soon enough, the Shoshone are settled at the edges of the camp. Half a day later, a cry goes up from one of the watches as 5 riders trot toward the railhead. J.T. Preston himself and his 4 deputies. He dismounts and strides forward. So who's in charge here? Crocker? Conley? Hayworth? It doesn't take him long to find out, nor to position his veteran lawman. At dusk, a cry of "Indians again!" goes up from one of the watches. And indeed, there are 50-some warriors, dressed much as the Shoshone that Yiska brought, riding slow toward the camp. At their head, the aging but proud Tavun Shea raises a hand to you in recognition. Hayworth glances your way as his railmen watch the warband approach.
You aren't bothering with a gun, so I'm guessing these are more friends of yours.
These are the lodges of the Six Horns tribe, fresh from wintering at Green Deer Valley.
Of course they are,
Hayworth says, then clears his throat.
Well, bring them by for a chat.
Tabernshire readily clasps your arms and recites, "It is good to see Tahoma again now that the snows have melted and the green returns. May we share our fires with yours and fight beside one another in these days ahead." Heof can't help but welcome the man into his camp after such a declaration. The next morning the watchers call out, "Riders coming in! Not Indians this time around!" There, on the horizon to the north and east, are a good 50 men on horseback. Their white shirts are a beacon as the saints come riding in. Heof peers out at them. "Mormons? Fine, they're welcome here." Indeed, Bishop Hancock readily rides in to greet the rail foreman, and the two begin a long and earnest talk. Around noon a cry rises up from the watchers. "Yet more Indians! Many, many more!" There, out of the north and west, ride a colorful warband of the Paiute. At their head, Many Falling Rocks rides with pride. Heof peers out at them. "They look determined." Many Falling Rocks rides forward of his sizable warband. "Tahoma, we are here to lay the ambush that slays those who have murdered my son." Oh yeah, I remember. You will have your chance, and soon. Many Falling Rocks lets out a fierce whoop, then gives a long nod over to Yiska and an equal one for Tabernshire before he disperses his warriors into the surrounding land. In but minutes they are hidden from all but the most vigilant eyes. The next day a cloud of dust arises above the ridge as hundreds of riders emerge from a path to the north. They are a motley bunch with every kind of shirt, horse, and coat you can imagine, from white to red and back again. Their rifles are uncased and held loose in hands as they form a column centered around 20 wagons that are pulled forward by full teams of oxen. "What do you think is in those?" Dan wonders. "My guess is they brought some big guns to this fight," Miss Carroway considers. "It is what I would have done." Hayworth raises a set of binoculars. "They've got to be the raiders, don't they? This is the war you were warning us about." "Yep." "Well, it's here," Hayworth notes, "and now we have to—" A crackle of gunfire erupts from atop the ridge as the roving patrol opens fire with a vengeance. A glance their way finds them scattering a number of would-be sharpshooters from the crest. Hayworth and the others look to you. Yeah, ask Many Falling Rocks to get a few scouts close enough to those wagons to see what is in them. Actually, telegraph for reinforcements first. Hayworth hurries with you to the telegraph shack, a simple affair of wood, slats, and copper wire that is not all that different from the one in Elko. But as he approaches, the youthful operator steps out and shakes his head. "Sorry, sir, the line has been cut somewhere to the west of us." Hayworth grimaces. "Well, that figures. Lucky I sent for more men when you first came, because no other message will be getting through." What about sending a work gang out to repair the line? "We don't know where the break is exactly, and they do. If I was them, I'd be waiting to ambush and bushwhack whoever we send," Hayworth explains. "Mind you, I'll send a ride out with a dispatch, but it'll take days to get where it needs to go, and I doubt we'll have that long." A mile and some out, the column comes to a halt, and its men fan out into loose files. Strangely, the wagons follow them in groups of 3. Signal Many Falling Rocks to begin skirmishing with the raiders. A volley of silent arrows rise up and pepper the enemy. As the enemy recoils from the onslaught, the Paiute warband emerges from cover and loose a volley of rifle fire as well. Several sections of the enemy break into a skirmish line and engage them with rounds of their own. The Paiute continue to fire upon the foe, but even so the enemy draws closer. One by one the wagons roll to a halt. Cloth covers are pulled off to reveal 6 iron cannon. Their mouths are painted up to resemble the fire they will shortly unleash. Indeed, the enemy readily chocks the wheel blocks and elevates the muzzle for firing. Gunners begin to trot out powder bags and heft round shots below the muzzle. Yeah, signal to Hartigan amidst the enemy camp and have him take out the cannon and escape. A sudden consternation rises up from amid the enemy camp as gunfire riffle out from within. A wagon suddenly explodes, followed by another and a third. Then Hartigan and his gang cuts their way out from the rear of the camp with guns blazing. As the smoke clears, you see that the cannons remain, but of the powder wagons there is not so much as a twig. All that heavy iron is simply going to sit there and rust. At the edge of things, Hartigan raises his hat to you and rides away, his obligation fulfilled. The cannons have fallen silent. The enemy gathers its strength. The railmen, virtually unscathed in all the fighting, prepare themselves for what comes next. Indeed, some of those ruffians across the way are edging forward. No doubt they are dreaming of filling their pockets with the wealth of the Central Pacific Railroad. Prepare to volley the rifles. You shout the order and dozens of rifles are readied by myriad hands. Chinese laborers in wind-blown straw hats stand steadily beside ruddy Irish overseers and stolid dark-skinned drovers. Every man is ready to defend what they have built together. You catch sight of Denny amongst those men who linger at the rear of the camp. His rousing words forge fresh steel into their spines as he leads them to their place in the line. The Saints are already prepared, their ranks uniformly spaced and rifles wavering. Preston and his deputies take their places amidst the railmen with an air of confidence that proves contagious. The bandits start forward. The soft clatter of their buckles and boots rises with their every step as they enter rifle range. Open fire. Your single shot becomes a volley from every railman's rifle, a great crackle that lashes at the distant enemy. Rifles bark and kick as fast as men can thumb in bullets or pour in powder. The Saints somehow keep up their volley fire as if they were but one breathing rifleman. Preston and his deputies fire their Henry rifles rapidly into the foe and reload just as quick. Yiska gives a shout and the unengaged Shoshone open fire from the edges of things. Tabunshea lets out a yell and the 6 horns lodges open fire from the edges of things. A bugle horn blasts through the air. The enemy shudders in its ranks. Men begin to turn as a full regiment of blue-coat cavalry, led by the sabres of Captain Baker and Lieutenant Dalton respectively, gallop toward their rear with rifles crackling. In but moments the enemy attack falls apart and they scatter from the field. The railmen cry out a whoop of victory and charge out after them. Left behind in the camp are the injured and dying. With hardly a man lost, the railmen count their blessings for your leadership. Alas, victory is yours. Then the thunderous, sustained whistle of a train screeches through the clear skies. End of chapter 8.